On behalf of the University of MaryWash, I would like to thank the judges for facilitating the debate as well as the opponents for participating. In this debate, we will propose 3 reasons for why cultural protection is bad. Before this, though, we will explain how the debate should be evaluated. This debate hinges on 2 questions. 1, whether or not the benefits of cultural protection outweigh the harms, and 2, whether or not state-based interventions are a preferable means of protecting culture over allowing the market to preserve culture. Something to keep in mind is that at the heart of the UNESCO debate is the audiovisual sector. That means Georgia's arguments about the environment are largely irrelevant to the debate, according to Pager, a Michigan State University law professor in 2011 who did a literature review. Culture is notoriously hard to pin down. Anything can be deemed to have cultural value. In practical terms, however, the audiovisual sector represents the principal battlefield being contested. As far back as the original 1947 GATT, trade negotiators insisted on screen quotas. Audiovisuals continue to command center stage in multilateral negotiations. This clear policy focus allows us to sidestep definitional ambiguity. Now, the team from Georgia also assumes culture is something static and unchanging and therefore able to be bought and sold or put on display in a museum. This is a wrongful way to view culture and is authoritarian. Pager says, culture is not zero-sum. There's no such thing as pure culture. All culture draws from a diverse blend of traditions and influences, and culture is constantly evolving. The very idea of protecting a national culture is like trying to save endangered butterfly by pinning them on the wall. Defining authentic culture invites essentializing tendencies that can be seen as a step toward authoritarian thought control. The first argument MaryWash will advance is in favor of the free market. We think the free market solves sufficiently for the protection of culture. When someone decides to buy a cultural good, they do so because they find inherent value in that good or service. An individual consumer's willingness to pay for certain products determines the demand that exists in an overall market for such good and has the critical effect in influencing the market price or commercial product of that good. This position is defended by substantial economic research, according to Hutter, professor of economics at Witten University in 10, who argues, because of the strong consensus among economists that exchange value exhausts the meaning of the notion of value, there are few contributions which explore the particular relevance of cultural value for economic action. Cultural value, like economic value, is a socially constructed measure. Artistic events and artifacts are performed for their own sake. Visual works, music scores, and texts might be safely ignored by economists where it's sufficiently isolated from the value created in currency-using exchanges. The 2 varieties of value are interdependent. The cultural value of certain items determines their economic value. Cultural esteem sets particular works and events apart from seemingly comparable items. They become scarce because there are only a few items of their level and status and recognizability. The subsequent increase in the prices paid for such work adds to gross products measured in market prices. A loss in the cultural value of an item leads to a decrease in the cultural rank, thus to more substitutes and eventually a fall in the price. What is problematic about Georgia's approach is they actually undermine culture through protectionism. They make the industries they support less competitive. According to Pager, European protectionism is based on a state patronage model. State patronage has become the leading model for cultural protection. State patronage has failed as an engine of cultural vitality. However, for all of its spending, France's creative industries continue to cede ground, and its cultural preeminence recedes further into memory. The decline of French cinema has been particularly galling. The more the French government has intervened, the farther behind its filmmakers has slipped. And the entire model of cultural protection has flawed, according to Pager. The failings of European cultural protectionism are unsurprising. They reflect basic design flaws in the patronage model. Patronage proponents keep thinking they can reconfigure the apparatus to make it work. Attempts resemble efforts to perfect a system built upon a flawed paradigm. What is needed is a new model. The pervasiveness of the state patronage as a global model has perpetuated a constricted vision of cultural policy. We need to work with markets, not against them. Besides creating distortions in the free market, cultural protectionism comes at the expense of global interdependencies that prevent war from occurring between nations. Cultural protectionism does lasting damage to global free trade. Pager again argues, cultural concerns have hindered wider efforts to advance trade liberalization and serve as a potent lightning rod to mobilize globalization's opponents. The advent of online content has only sharpened protectionist instincts. Such anxieties do lasting damage. Lastly, commercial value is necessary and sufficient to solve their arguments. It spreads cultural values and enhances them regionally. Reggae proves. Kaplan and Cohen, George Mason University Economics Department members in 2004 tell, trade and globalization often support and extend cultural distinctiveness. Reggae would have been less successful and less diverse without consumer support from the US and UK. In other cases, trade holds communities together. Trade in goods and services as a substitute for factor migration and thus supports the distinctiveness of the region. The English drink Spanish wine and the Spanish eat English corn, but England remains a culture of corn growers and Spain remains a culture of wine growers. Secondarily, we will argue that the United States soft power outweighs the benefits of cultural protection. Cultural protectionism hurts U.S. soft power. Pager advances that concern over cultural diversity is unsurprising in a world where American popular culture is pervasive. Such global dominance makes for one of the few bright spots in America's soft power that underpins U.S. hegemony. Now, soft power is key to effective coalitions that are critical to solving all global problems. Rice, a William and Mary Vice Provost of International Affairs in 2008, argues, no one country can defeat today's transnational threats on its own. Terrorism, disease, environmental pollution, weapons of mass destruction. All of these can only be solved by states acting together. If others mistrust the U.S., building effective coalitions and promoting a liberal international order will be far more challenging. Our last position is that Georgia's position of cultural protection is a violation of free speech that has authoritarian tendencies. Gestures toward authoritarianism should always be rejected because the infringement on rights creates a slippery slope toward taking all rights. The specific reason the affirmative is flawed is because it is a form of censorship and a violation of one's right to free speech. According to Pager, patronage regimes represent an exercise in positive censorship. By funding some artists but not others, the state determines whose voices get heard. Patronage inherently invites authoritarian abuse. The link between cultural funding and state ideology can be blatant. The lack of transparency in funding hardly invites confidence. Patronage has led to the virtual abandonment of certain film genres. Content discrimination is hardly democratic. Audiences are force-fed cultural broccoli whose unpalatability to popular taste is paraded as a badge of honor, vindicating the superiority of elites. For these reasons, I urge you to vote nay in favor of MaryWash. Thank you.